So we did it with the tiny ones, now let's hit it with the big boys. CZ P10f versus the P09. Let's get to work. Work here. Welcome back to Work the Trigger. Just recently we compared the CZ P10C to the CZ P07. It's a question I get a lot about those two guns. Which would I prefer? Well, today we're going to be handling their big brothers. We've got the CZ P10f and the CZ P09. These are both full-size handguns with magazines that at their stock length hold 19 rounds, which is 2 rounds more than pretty much everybody else in the size bracket. A couple of things to begin with. Neither one of these guns is stock. The P10f here is definitely not stock. It's got a Norso slide, a Holosun optic. It's got Theta trigger. The P09 here just has a little bit of trigger work, not a whole lot else done to this one. But today I'm here more to talk about the aspects, the features of both, the recoil impulse, how they feel while you're shooting. I'm not going to really get into comparing the triggers because, I mean, we are talking striker fire versus hammer fired, which is one thing that I've noticed a lot in the comments to the other video is how much striker fire versus hammer fire tends to segregate people. And I tell you guys, there's love enough for both of them. I shoot a hammer-fired gun in competition, carry a striker-fire gun. I've got my P10 on me right now. But we're not really here to talk about the triggers. We're here to talk about the guns, the features, and how they work. First up, let's go ahead and talk about our P10F here. So again, mine does have a beautiful Piranha slide from Norso on it. I've now got 2 slides from Norso. And they did send me the Piranha here. I paid for the Reptile on my P10, but they sent me the Piranha, and honestly, I prefer the Piranha. The Reptile it's cool looking, but the Piranha just kind of goes along with the CZ lines a little bit better in my mind. Now, one thing I want to bring up really quick about the magazines, and this is the same in the 19-round magazines as it is with the 15-round magazines in the P10C and the P07, is the magazines. So this is a magazine from a P10F. You can see here we've got 2 cuts up here, and we've got this angled cut up here. So these magazines can be used in a P10F and a P09. They could also be used in the P10C and the P07. This is a P09 magazine. You can see here that we've got a singular cut on the front, and there's no horizontal cut on the front of the magazine. These will not work in a P10F. So your mags do need these double cuts on the front to be able to function in a P10F. P10F's mag release is just in a little bit different of an area. So let's go ahead and get some shots through the P10 here, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. So there are our first shots through the F. The F's recoil impulse is very similar to a Glock, but because it fits your hand better, I find them a little bit more controllable than the comparable size Glock. 19 to P10C, P10F to Glock 17. The P10 just tends to sit a little bit better. I appreciate its higher beaver tail back here. Allows me to get higher up on my gun with my grip without worrying about slide bite. The controls on the P10F, the trigger, again, striker fire trigger, and it's a really nice striker fire trigger out of the box. It's just got a Theta in it because why not? But there's not a whole lot you need to do to the trigger in a P10 to be able to make it a perfectly serviceable trigger. Think about how many guys are out there running stock Glock triggers, and the P10 trigger is easily worlds better than a stock Glock trigger. The slide stop slide release is super easy for me to get my hand on. This particular one is an extended release from Apex, but it's in the exact same location, just sticks out a little bit further. And I do appreciate where they put that further back on the frame. I'll show you what I mean here in just a minute. Now let's talk really quick about the grip length. The grip length on both the P10F and the P09 is long. It's longer than what you're going to find in a lot of these traditional duty size handguns because we do have those extra 2 rounds. It's also extremely ergonomic, more ergonomic than most polymer guns that you're going to find. Now the problem I have with the P10F is the same problem that I've got with the P10C. The backstrap options only alter your bulge out here in the back. bulge. They don't pull up here into the beaver tail at all to increase the length of pull. Now, the length of pull is the distance between the back of the gun here and the front face of your trigger. And where that matters is I've got medium-sized hands, so my hands fit this gun extremely well. You get somebody with larger hands in there, and their hands aren't going to fit as well. Their trigger finger is going to be further forward, and they're going to hit the trigger in the wrong place. The solution to that is to increase the space back here in the back to pull their hand backwards, putting the trigger in the right spot. Unfortunately, CZ doesn't give you that option with either the P10f or the P09. So I'll run a little bit of B-roll on the stock P10 sights. The sights are worlds better than the P09, unfortunately. The P09 and the P07 both come with sights that basically have stickers for sights. They did a lot better with the P10s. They have night sight options. Most of them are blacked out rears, high-vis fronts. They might have or might not have tritium. They do have just dot options for them, but I honestly have never even seen one of those in the stores. Now the P10F here, unlike the P10C, does not have an ambidextrous
mag release.
It does have just a single-sided swappable
mag release.
What that means though is for the F, mag drops are significantly easier than with the earlier Cs that had that ambidextrous
mag release.
Let's go ahead and finish our rounds off in the P10F here, then we'll get on to the P09. Alright, so now we've got the P09, the big brother of the P07. Very similar sizing to the P10F. It does look physically bigger. It's not. It's actually pretty much the same length, pretty much the same height. You get that extended grip just like we do with the P09. But unlike with the P09, we're looking at a more traditional CZ here with the inset frame rails, meaning smaller slide, smaller reciprocating mass. We're going to see just what that does in recoil here in just a second. Another couple of features, it does have the swappable decocker and safety, because this is the Omega trigger group from CZ. So the idea behind the Omega trigger group that this and the P07 have is simplicity and versatility. It does, out of the box, I think, feel a little bit better than a standard CZ75 trigger. Now, that's not saying a whole lot, because out of the box, the CZ75 trigger, not that great. They're amazing with some work done, but out of the box, not that great. This is better. Still not that great. It's a little bit spongier than I'd like. The brake is more of a rolling brake than a glass brake, which I like that crisp brake on these. And with the Omega group, you can do work to it, but I have not ever gotten an Omega to feel like a worked CZ75 trigger. So if you're looking at not upgrading the trigger at all or doing like minor things to it, the Omega is pretty solid. But if you're looking at going like all the way up to as good as you can get in a hammerfire gun, you're not going to be able to get that with the Omega trigger group in the P09, unfortunately. So let's go ahead and toss some rounds through that P09, see if that smaller slide and reciprocating mass has an effect on the recoil impulse when compared to the F. Okay, so as you can see, the P09 does shoot extremely nicely. The recoil impulse is linear, very predictable, settles back in really nice. It does recoil a little bit less than the F. Not surprising overly. In addition to that slower reciprocating mass, we are also fighting two springs rather than just one on that recoil impulse, which dampens that even more. Little feature of hammer-fired guns, they gotta cock the hammer. When that slide is coming back, it's actually fighting both the recoil spring and that hammer spring. And that hammer spring is going to lighten up a little bit of the jerkiness of that motion. The trigger on the P09 here, significantly less predictable than the striker trigger on the P10F. And I'm sorry, it just is. It breaks really far back, which throws you off a little bit. I actually threw off my first shot about 3 inches high because of it. Not something that you're really going to be worried about if this is your gun that you train with, but if it's not the gun that you train with and you're jumping back and forth between a striker gun and a hammer-fired gun, this might not be the best option for you, at least in its mostly stock state like we've got here. Let's take some more shots through it and we'll talk a little more. So the ergonomics on the P09 here, not as good in my mind as the P10. It does have a flatter overall shape to the grip. It's more like the CZ Phantom and obviously the P07. The P10 has more of a palm swell style grip, both on the sides and on the back. You get that larger flowing grip rather than just the straight grip handles. The stippling also not quite as good. The stippling on the P09 here is more of a gravel style stippling on the sides, and then a very, very light linear on the back and some nubs on the front. The P10f has a very similar stippling to the P10C. Unfortunately, it's not quite as rough as the Gen 1 of the P10C, but the Gen 2 P10C, where they reduce that texturing a little bit, is the same as on the P10f, and it is still better than the P09 here. Let me finish off this mag, and I'll show you one of my problems with the P09. Okay, so now one of the problems with my P09. Mag release is in the same spot as everything else, right behind the trigger guard. Super easy to get to, no big deal. Slide release, however. Slide release is way up here on the other side of our decocker. The decocker is in about the same spot as the slide release on the P10f. The slide release up here, I can't get to it without really stretching or changing my grip. Not the biggest fan of that. Again, the sight options on the P09 here are kind of not great. This particular one does have a threaded barrel, but it's not the tactical version because we're not looking at the suppressor height sights. The suppressor height sights on these are generally blacked out, which I would actually prefer to the little pasty, stickery dots that we've got on the model here. But again, the recoil impulse on the P09 here, slightly better than the P10f, a little bit more controllable, a little bit more predictable. P10f, you're looking at a better grip. In shooting, it's probably because I shoot a P10 so much more than the P09 here. I find the P10 a little bit easier to get off the second shot, but it's still, you can tell that this recoils a little bit better, so with practice, could probably get as fast, if not a little bit faster, with something like this, especially if you toss a dot on this. That is another point, however. The P09 and the P07 do not have optics available options. There is no factory option that you can get. Now, you can send it out and get it milled, but that's just another step. Both P10C and the P10f have optics ready options. They're a little bit more expensive, they don't come with plates, so there's a little bit more you gotta do, but you don't have to do quite as much as sending your gun off to get it chopped. So that's it, guys. That is our comparison of the P10f versus the CZ P09. Two full-size firearms offerings from one of my personal favorite firearms companies. What it probably will come down to is if you're more comfortable with hammer-fired or striker-fired, but I'll tell you, you can't go wrong with either one of these. Both of them are relatively light, both of them work, and both of them are really accurate. Really quick, let's show you the target. So we've been sitting at about 10 yards, and here's our groupings. This one over here is the P10f, this one over here is the P09, and mind you, when I'm doing these, I'm not really going for accuracy. I'm not slow firing, trying to get accurate. I do fire kind of slow, trying to feel out the gun, but really when you're looking at it, I mean, there's 18 rounds between each one of these, with pretty heavy groupings here in the center of both of them. So I'm not overly concerned about the accuracy of these. CZs make really good barrels and make really accurate guns. So thanks again, guys, for watching. I hope this video helped out a little bit if you are in the market for either one of these firearms. If you've got one of these or both of these and you've got a little bit of input, go ahead and write those in the comments down below. If this video helped you out a little bit, do me a favor and hit that like button. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Remember, guys, I appreciate every one of you, and until next time, do your research, get informed, and get to work.